Hello mga ka-journey! For today's episode, we are going to talk about how one compromise could lead to another. That is why this episode is entitled Fake It or Faith It. To start with, friend, may I ask you, how will you illustrate compromise?
Well, I see it like a strangler plant. A baliti tree is a stronger plant. They usually begin with just a small plant, usually beside a main host na plant or tree. A stronger plant usually grow uh, just beside the host plant, and then they grow a little bit, and then they started to cling to the main plant, and then parang wala lang, the main plant is not disturbed, wala lang din, and then finally as they grow and grow, they are now strangling, like anong Tagalog sa strangle, parang they cling to that main plant and host,
Tree.
the tree, and then they finally grow and grow until they squeeze out the life of the tree, and so the inside become hollow, and the main tree or plant dies, and then they finally are the ones na take over the whole plant. So that's a strangler plant, and I see compromises as that. We compromise from one little sin. Ano lang, try lang, wala namang wrong sa try lang, and then finally try, and then again, and then finally it consumes us so much that we are hooked into it and we do not know how to get out.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes, for some, it becomes an addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and that it takes over them.
Until they become dead spiritually.
Yes, most likely be
And
dead
that
spiritually.
compromise already have taken over their lives.
Yeah. I have a question for you, because you have gone through that life. How are you led to your addiction from pornography until you went out of church, you actually had sexual addictions? What's the process of that for you?
At first, it was just like a mere curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
but it was actually being driven from a traumatic event since I was sexually abused when I was a child. And I've mentioned this several times in our previous podcasts, that it opened my mind to certain things that I'm not supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically in the sexual aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I already had an idea about what sex is,
Mm-hmm.
and
At a very young
that
age.
it can give pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
but in a wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was a child and I am a curious child, and
Mhm.
every child is curious. So I was exploring on a lot of things and even experimenting on a lot of things until I discovered masturbation. I discovered pornographic magazines. It started with these things, and then it went up to pornographic videos until I got addicted with it, and even came to a point na I stole CDs back then because I didn't have money to buy and satisfy my desires for it, my addictions to it. And it led to fantasy since I've been watching these pornographic videos. So it created imaginations in my mind. And at the height of my puberty,
Mm-hmm.
kasi I was high school back then when I got addicted to these things, it really created a lot of fantasy in my mind. And that fantasy led me to actually engage into an actual same-sex relationship. And that really, because of that relationship, since I was an active Christian back then, but not really having the genuine relationship with Christ. Active lang.
Such
Like,
programs.
you're just active in the program, but you're not really having a real relationship with Christ. So, since I felt in myself that I had to put up this facade that people should look at me as a holy person, that I am like this and that. I don't do bad things because I am very active sa church. So when nobody's looking, when nobody knows, I do things that people doesn't even imagine that I'm doing it, because those were my addictions and those were my struggles. And I struggled in secret, and you know that sin thrives in secrecy.
Yes.
And the more I keep it in secret, the more it grows, because I don't get any help. I don't get any advice
Support.
from it. I don't have support from it. I'm not being told of how I'm gonna overcome it. Although many times na I knelt before the Lord, and I remember this, that I cried several times to the Lord asking Him to remove these sinful desires. But back then, I just know, no, I didn't know anything at all about having a relationship with Christ. So praying to God was just in vain, kasi I was praying the wrong kind of prayers. And overcoming back then was just, I was focused on overcoming rather than getting to know the one who can overcome for me. So I felt like I am powerless over it. And that led to a deeper, habitual and destructive lifestyle. That after college, when I explored the homosexual lifestyle, I got addicted to sex until I had HIV, STIs, and all that. So that
it led from palang snowball na lumaki lang lumaki.
it accumulated and led to something bigger and bigger until there's something that's irreversible and permanent already.
So how did you feel at the time when you realized that you have no control over your addiction, over yourself?
First, when I remember this, at first when I discovered masturbation, I felt shame and guilt after doing it. And I remember Adam and Eve, when they first fell to sin, they felt ashamed and guilt, and they hid from the Lord, diba? The same thing that I felt then, na I felt like it is something sinful, but at the same time, it is
Pleasurable.
kind of addicting. That even though for that certain moment after doing it, you feel guilt, but then after a while, you wanted to go back and do it again because it feels good. So since it kept going on, and it happened repeatedly, so it became a habit, and then it became an addiction. And since I am in the Christian community, very active, very visible in the Christian community, specifically in the music ministry, sabi ko nga, I was doing things behind closed doors when no one is watching, because I had to put up this facade. Diba na I'm a Christian and I'm holy and I don't do bad things. I need to be holy. I need to look right before the people. And I know it's wrong, but I just couldn't help it. I did not have the power to overcome it. And back then, I didn't understand pa how Christ can give us strength to overcome these things.
I remember for myself as well na when we are active in church, we thought that equals to a relationship with Jesus. Just because we're active in church, we thought, okay na yon. We will be saved because we are serving God and we already have a relationship with Jesus. But backed in our own privacy, we actually do sin, right? And then we kind of ease ourselves because we are active. Parang ma-weigh din yun ng balance na because I'm active, tapos ito yung sin ko, parang I'll get saved pa rin kasi I'm doing something that is good, right? And somehow this most like you, we have this, many in our church have this facade na okay, I need to appear good and righteous inside the church.
And you know what's ironic? we don't talk about this in church.
Yes, of course.
Rarely.
Yes.
There may be times, but we don't really dig deep into
Mhm.
it because culturally, Filipinos
Yeah.
cannot even say the word.
Yeah.
Kasi parang meron tayong culture na parang nahihiya, but on the other hand pala, we
We do the opposite, right?
do the opposite.
Mhm.
And it's like being hypocrite na you don't talk about it, you don't address it, but then everyone's doing it.
And siguro we are comfortable talking about this because number one, we're nurses. And then we had this ministry. But for many Filipinos, sexual thing is a taboo to talk about.
And that's a taboo in the inside
The church.
the church and in the Christian community. But now, if you look at the secular world,
Of course.
it's not a taboo anymore, right? So, parang the dilemma there comes in when you contemplate on how are we going to address this problem to the younger generation,
Yeah.
and how can we protect them as well.
So, back to our topic, you kind of like, okay, I live a facade, but aren't you like, I'm fed up with this, I'm done.
To be honest, I really hope for a better life. And I'm actually, and I envy my friends who doesn't have that struggles, who I think na doesn't have that struggles, ha? Kasi I felt like God was so unfair that He allowed certain things to happen in my life that led me to that kind of addiction. And I was asking the Lord, why me of all? Because, you know, in our society, when somebody is so out and open about these things, they are actually labeled as liberated, and a lot in the Christian community would even think that they are the greatest of all sinners.
Treated
Na
as.
when you say I'm a sex worker or I'm a prostitute, then people would like,
Even in the secular world,
even
they're
even in the
belittled,
secular
right?
world, they discriminate these people. But when you talk
Much more in
about the
church.
greatest sin, it is not these sexual sins. It is pride and
Yes,
self-righteousness. Yun lang yung parang nakakaawa when we talk about people who struggled in secret and didn't get help, because
Yes.
deep inside, as for myself, back then, I felt like I'm the worst of all sinners. That's why I wanted a better life, because I felt like I'm the worst of all sinners and I'm so filthy that I wanted a different life. I wanted a different desire.
You wanted to be happy. You wanted to be accepted,
Yeah,
right?
I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to be pure as well. But I couldn't do it because I don't have power over it and I could not help myself. So what I did when I had when the opportunity came, when the time came that I had a relationship and I thought it was the perfect time for me to really embrace the lifestyle, because I thought I will be happy with that relationship. Then I decided to really, let go of my values, let go of what I know in the biblical principle that's morally right. Kasi I have to let go just to, avoid myself from hurting. So I would have to consciously rebel. That's the word. That I have to consciously rebel against God and go against His principles and turn my back on God. And even turn my back on my family, my friends, my ministry. Because I could not resolve, kasi I know the truth.
Yes.
And I know what's the end, the outcome, the end
The
result.
consequences of that.
Yeah, the end result of all these things that I'm doing. I know what's the result in the end. And just to save myself from feeling guilty and shame about it. So parang I just consciously, just have to live my faith.
So, just a side note, this is why we are actually having Journey in His Love, because we wanted these things to have a safe place for this discussion like this, because there's a lot, even inside our church, especially inside the church that are struggling with this like you have before, na they are not getting help, neither are they having support system. When I say support, it's not supporting the lifestyle, but the person who's struggling. We talked about this in the previous podcast, right? In friendship goals. And so this is why we do it, because we wanted this to come out into open, because you could not address anything that is not put into open.
Mhm.
This is why God said us, if the Son sets you free, you're free indeed. You come to me. Like, let's get it into open. But I have a question for you. How did you try to hide it? When did you finally decide not to hide it anymore? And why were you hiding it?
I was hiding it because I have a sense of guilt nga,
Mm-hmm.
na it is not morally right.
Right.
And as a Christian, I know that this is not the kind of life that I'm supposed to live. So I was hiding it. But the dangerous thing about hiding it is that, yun nga, as I said, sin thrives in secrecy. The more you hide it,
Parang nag-root siya.
mm,
Because a plant, before it takes root, dapat may dark siyang side, and then it takes root on that. So, you hide it.
and this I realized then na I was so focused on my weaknesses at that time. I was so focused on my struggles and what I am not able to overcome, that I lost focus on Jesus who can overcome for me. And I remember this quote from my favorite author that says, "Never allow yourself to talk in a hopeless, discouraged way. If you do, you will lose much. Talk and act as if your faith is invincible." Yun yung, I should have known that before. Na, I should have focused on my relationship with Jesus. I should have focused on what
Instead
Jesus,
of overcoming, focusing on overcoming.
yeah, because my prayers back then was like, Lord, take out this desire, this lustful desire that I have, and I focus my prayer on that rather than focusing my prayer to, Lord, I want to know you. I want to seek you. Help me to know more about you and understand what your love for me is.
So, usually, like you who had made that decision to get out of church and to finally turn your back on God, usually it's based on emotion, right? For you. As for experience, on the other hand, in my experience, especially with dealing with you, is that if I let my emotions and guide me, we would not have been friends today, right? Because you have no idea how we fight, but
They have no idea how we fight.
yeah, they have no idea how we fight. But I have learned that it's not about feelings that you based your decision on. It's on principle, on God's word. Then I discovered that, and my favorite author actually said, faith it. Even if you do not have the feelings for it. Example, even if I do not have the feelings, like I don't want to pray today for you. I don't like praying because I was angry at you. Or I don't want to see you, or whatever that big emotion, negative big emotion. Instead of listening to my own emotions and let it be, I decide to do what is right. And then I prayed to God to give me the right emotions for it. Then this is what I discovered. Emotions follow after the decision to actually do what is right. So I prayed to God, Lord, please give me the heart to still be good to Randy, even if I don't feel like it. When he walks into that door, give me the heart for him, because right now I'm very angry.
And you believe that God will give you that heart.
And I told God actually that I'll do what is right. Just give me the emotions for it. Because they said, usually, this is what people say, ayoko maging peke.
Yeah, I don't want to fake it.
I don't want to fake it. Magpakatotoo ako. If magpakatotoo ako, hindi na tayo friends ngayon. Because I chose to do what was right as God has convicted me. And I pray to God, Lord, give me the emotions now because I don't have it. Give me the love that you have for Him. What I discovered, amazingly, if when I do what was right, the emotions follow. The discovery is that emotions actually follows when we decide, when we do the decision and ask God for the power to overcome our emotion.
So you don't actually feel like you are faking it.
Yes, it's not faking it, it's faithing it. Rather than fake it, I faith it that God will give me the emotion, that He will be true to His word, that He will change my heart, even though I do not feel like it, but because I will be doing what He tells me to do.
And you do it because you believe that that is
What is right?
morally right.
Because this is what God wants me to do. He told me to love my enemies, to bless those who cursed me, to just be good to those.
In short, in the context of the love of God,
Yes.
that God is love, and
So
we
I
should
do-
love one another
Yes.
as you love yourself.
As I love myself, so when I decided to do what's right, then God is indeed true to His word, that He will give us the power to love when we chose to love. So it's not about faking it. They're like, ayoko maging
Maging
peke sa, dapat true to myself. Eh pag ganun tayo lahat, wala na. All our relationship will be broken.
Just a thought that came into my mind right now, na paano kaya if ganun din si Jesus when He ministered to us, diba? Na what if Christ followed His heart
Na,
and
diba kasi-
followed His feelings, right?
Because in Gethsemane,
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like
he actually
going
prayed
to the cross.
to His Father, and He doesn't really feel like going to Calvary and sacrifice Himself, diba?
But-
That was the first time that He prayed
for
for
Himself.
Himself.
Yes.
That was the only time that the Bible
Father,
have recorded
remove
that
this cup.
He was asking
Diba?
for Himself na. Kung pwede
it be
lang,
possible.
if possible.
Remove
No?
this cup.
Iba na lang, wag na lang ako, but
Oo.
the beautiful thing there sa prayer niya was that He also said na, in your will, not my will.
So it is doing God's will even if the emotion is not yet there. So you faith it. Faith it until God intervenes to give you the
So you're trying to say now that even if that's not what you truly feel, but if God is telling you to do this because
what
this
is right.
what is right in His principles of loving God and loving your neighbors, then you have to do it. And
Yes.
we should do it because that's the right thing to do.
I do not only do it because that's the right thing to do, because I love the one who tells me to do what was right. And I believe in His word, and I know emotions will follow. Do you know what I realized also? Happiness comes in obedience to God. Right now, I may not feel like loving you. Right now, I do not feel like, being good. But when I follow His word, when I overcome the emotion, happiness comes. That's when the real joy comes. That I have now joy. Thank you, Lord, why I was able to love. And then I see the result of just loving a person. This is the joy. If I just followed my emotion, then I would not have seen what it does to a person, right? That's the joy. The initial feeling is not good. I mean, you have to fight over. I have to faith it that the feelings will come many times.
Parang marriage, no?
Hindi ko alam, hindi pa ako married.
When you're married to someone, even if you don't like,
Feel like loving today.
even if you don't feel like washing the dishes, but because your wife is pregnant or just given birth, but you have to do the chores. Kasi, you have to do the chores kasi that's what will make the family happy. And it's doing your role as, a partner. And being married to Christ and having a relationship with Jesus is also the same thing.
Mhm.
Na even if you don't feel like doing it,
Yeah.
because it's the right thing for your relationship.
Mhm.
And I like it when you said na you don't just obey it because that's the right thing to do, but you obey it because I love the person who said it. And I think that's the best attitude when we approach a lot of difficult situations. Now we follow what Christ says because it's moral, not just because it's morally right, but because
You love the
we
one.
love Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, friend, how can you be true to yourself without faking it?
I think we should not focus on the word faking it,
Mhm.
and instead of hiding hiding in secret and hiding your sins, struggling in secret, we should, come out to save people.
Hindi naman yung come out na
Na to anybody else, you have to find people who you can trust with and people who are safe,
what do you mean by safe people?
When I say safe,
Mhm.
these are the people who have relationship with Christ and who can really give a sound support with a morally right principles. Na these people can actually help you in your journey with God.
So, as Christians, we need to be that safe place.
Yes.
And this is why we are actually starting this journey in His love, because we wanted to be a safe place for those who are struggling. And we also wanted to have more people who are a safe place for those who are struggling. When, by God's grace, as Christians, we should not be judgmental for anyone who's struggling, because each of us have our own struggle. We may struggle differently, but each of us, I'm sure, have our own challenges, has our own struggles. And instead of gossiping, backbiting people who has such struggle as you did, I hope many of us in the church would be a safe place for people to come out, to acknowledge that these are my weaknesses. This is what I'm struggling with. Can you pray with me? Can you be with me? Will you not judge me if I tell you that this is my weakness? We should be that kind of person. Encourage them in their walk with God and celebrate with them with their, even if they're small steps to Christ. Celebrate it with them. Be a friend as Jesus did. Eat with them, dine with them, be friends with them. No condemnation. Even dining, our friendship is built on food, right?
And you don't even have to really talk about,
Yes.
the Bible and Jesus Christ.
Every single time.
Yeah, you don't
Just
really
build
have
that-
to.
Just build that relationship and wait for the person to actually open up. Hindi yung ginawa ko sa'yo, di ba?
Yeah.
Na parang kinorner ko siya. Wrong yun. But we started on a rough spot, but we learned in a way that it's wrong to do that. Let that person open up to you, but just build that relationship.
Until then, you have to be
Be
a friend
patient.
to that person.
Yes, be
And
patient.
just be
Lang
there, because showing that you're there because that
person
person
matters.
that person is important,
Mhm.
and that person matters.
And that person is love, because if there's one thing many of those who are struggling with, is that they do not feel like they're loved.
So this is what safe people
Yes.
actually really means.
Yes, this is what safe means. To be just be there and be a support system. We should not let our feelings guide us.
And
Neither
this is-
do our biases.
And this is what I really like about Journey in Its Love, because it doesn't just focus on people who are struggling, but it also touches people, all walks of life, to be a better partner, to be a better friend, to be a better family member, a better co-worker, to anyone who is struggling. Na we can be that safe
place.
person.
So we should not as Christians let our feelings guide us. Na parang ayoko, I don't want to fake it. So be guided by Christian principles. Be guided by the principles of Christ, Christ's virtues. As Christians, it is important to be guided in these virtues of Christ, which is love. We need to think of faith. Our feelings may follow after our decision. And the thing when I said na I do what is right, not because it is right, but because I love the one
Who said
said this thing, which is God. I learned it from the book of The Hiding Place by Coritin Bon. When that moment when the person who killed her family member during the Holocaust actually approached her and asked her for forgiveness, and she doesn't have the heart to forgive that person, but she chose to extend her hand, asking that God will give her the heart to forgive that person. And when she extended her hand, the love of Christ flows through her, and she was able to give that love and forgiveness to the person, hug that person, and love that person, and forgive that person. And so it is not about faking, but about faithing that God will, by exercising obedience, will give us the right tools and the right emotions to do His will.
And you know what I realized in this episode is that though you don't feel like doing it and you don't feel good about it.
For the
But-
moment, you don't feel.
Yeah, for the
yes.
moment. But when you take it to God and be real to God, what you really feel at that moment, and asking Him to control you. I remember in 2 Corinthians 5:14, let the love of Christ control us. Then His love will be there to guide you and to, show you and give you strength to do the right thing.
Because
And I realized that not faking it and faithing it instead means being true to God first
yes.
before you can finally be true to the world.
Hello, Ka-Journey. Journey in His Love would like to hear from you.
If you want to suggest topics that you want us to discuss in our podcast, feel free to contact us on our social media accounts. Let's journey together. If you find this content helpful in your life's journey, share, hit like, subscribe, and follow Journey in His Love on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify.